Shabbat Shalom and Happy New Year, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Alan.
Shabbat Shalom. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and Shabbat Shalom to you guys. It's nice to see you again in our new year.
Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to Sisterhood Shabbat 2022. I can't tell you how sorry I am that we're not all able to meet for dinner this evening. I really was looking forward to socializing and talking with all of you. Camilla Feibelman, director of the New Mexico Sierra Club, will be our guest speaker this evening. And I must quote from one of her most recent editorials that has just really touched me. Her title of this editorial is Kindness and Action in the Face of Darkness. Let love for one another overcome frustration, practice empathy and kindness. This is really a sermon for a rabbi, but I thought these words were very fitting to start the service out this evening. So Beth Stewart is going to be saying the blessing over our candles, and we'll start the service. Thank you, Beth. And please turn to page 10 for Yeti Nevish. Talia and Aviva Timmons will be singing and leading us.
Ki erablo yedidutach minofetu v'chotam Adonai ziva olam nafshi chovat ahavatach ana el narefana v'harot noam zivach az tichazek v'titrapei v'haitalach shivchat olam v'tikyehemu v'chamecha v'chusna el ben ohavach ki zekama misoch misaf liro b'tiferet uzach ana eli machmad libi ushana ve'yalti dalam hidalena ufros chaviv alai etzukat shelomach ta'ir eretz mivodach nahagila v'nismecha bach maher ahuv ki ramoed v'chaneni ki me'olam.
Thank you, that was beautiful. Aaron and Isla Tarika will be sharing a poem by Ruth Brim, Kabbalat Shabbat.
Praise be you, eternal one, our God, ruler of the universe, who with your word brings on the evening twilight, rolling away the light before the darkness.
The trees are silent and the earth is still. The sun makes no sound. No voice has the hill.
The earth rolls in silence. The stars pierce the sky. The moon will not whisper. The clouds cannot sigh.
And though God has bid them, we have not heard. This night has fallen without sound of God's word.
Yet your law sends the stars across the night. The earth turns surely from darkness to light.
How then shall we praise God who silently gives? He silently praises who righteously lives. Our stillness is praise when our ears have heard the command of love, God's unspoken word.
Thank you, Ayla and Erica. Aaron, that was beautiful. Please join Talia and Aviva again for Lechuneranana on page 11. Shiru la'Adonai Hashem Malach, Mizmor Shir la'Adonai. They will be leading us in all of those psalms.
Adonai, Umelech Gadol al kol Elohim, Asher b'yado mecharei aretz, v'torachot harim lo.
Come then, let us bow and kneel, let us bend our knees to the presence of Adonai.
Abayim shana aku bedor, v'yomaram to'e levavhem, v'hem lo yadu derachai, asher nishbati ve'api, im yivaun el menuchati. Please turn now to the top of page 13. Shiru Adonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Adonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Adonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru Meyom Leom Yeshuato, Sabru Vagoyim Kevodo, Bechol Ha'amim Nifleotav, Ki Gadol Adonai, Hulam Elot, Yorahu, Al Kol Elohim, Kol Elohei Ha'amayim Elelim, Va'adonai Shamayim Asa, Od V'Hadar Lefanav, Oz V'Tiferet Be'mikdasho, Havu L'Adonai Mishpachot Amim, Havu L'Adonai Kavod V'Oz, Havu L'Adonai Kavod Shemaho, Yehuda V'Chatzrotav. Now to the top of page 15. Adonai malach tagel haaretz, yismechu im rabim.
Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine.
Righteousness.
Righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers about. Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax. At the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth. The heavens tell the God righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory.
Shir Adonai, Shir Chadash, Ki neflo tasa, Hoshea lo yamino uzroa kadsho.
Sing to Adonai a new song, for Adonai has wrought wonders. God's right hand and holy arm have brought deliverance. Adonai declared deliverance. As nations looked on, God's righteousness was revealed. God's dealt faithfully and kindly with the house of Israel. The very ends of the earth saw a God's saving power.
Is your coming.
Blessed is your coming, Shabbat, blessed is your coming. Bring with you rest and peace following a tumultuous week filled with so many demands. Bring the space in which with others and alone we can shape an infinity of dreams. Bring the hour of forgiveness in which to hear the pounding heart of another human being. Blessed is your coming, Shabbat. Blessed is your Creator. Blessed is your light.
Thank you. Thanks, Beth. And please welcome Julia and Leah Koshkin to lead us in the Lahadodi on page 23 through 25.
לא תבושי ולא תקרבי, לך תשתוכחי ומתרמי. בך יחסו עניי, ומינתה יראתי לך דודי. לקראת קלה ולשבת לקבלה לך דודי. לקראת קלה ולשבת לקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפוצי ואת אדוני תעיתי. היה משתנה אני שמחה ונגילה לך דודי. לקראת קלה ולשבת לקבלה לך דודי. לקראת קלה Shabbat Kabbalat. Going shalom atalav, b'zimra u'tov. Tochei hatzalah, boi kala, lecha dodi. Likrat kala Shabbat Kabbalah lecha dodi. Likrat kala Shabbat Kabbalah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Julia. It was beautiful. Betsy Stein will now be leading us in Sadi Katamar, page 27 to 28. So we'll be in the middle of page 28. Please join me. Sadi Katamar Yifrach Be'erez Balvadon Yiske Shetulim Bevet Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu Od Yenuvun B'Seva Deshenim Verananim Yiyu Lehagid Ki Yashar Adonai Tzuri Belo Avlatabo.
Thank you. Beautiful.
This is a poem entitled Sabbath Prayer by Ruth Brennan. Lord, help us now to make this a new Shabbat. After noise, we seek quiet. After crowds of indifferent strangers, we seek to touch those we love. After concentration on work and responsibility, we seek freedom to meditate, to listen to our inward selves. We open our eyes to the hidden beauties and the infinite possibilities in the world that you are creating. We break open the gates of the reservoirs of goodness and kindness in ourselves and in others. We reach toward one whole, perfect moment of Shabbat. Jackie, Marissa, and Lulu Wald will be leading us in the Baruch Hu and the Achavat Holam. And that is on page 39A and 40.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Avat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Avta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al Kein Adonai Eloheinu V'shafteinu v'kumeinu Nasiach b'chukecha V'nismag l'divrei Toratecha U'v'mitzvotecha Le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu ve'orech yameinu U'vahem negeh yomam v'layla V'ahavecha tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Evamo Yisrael
Turn to page 41 for the Shema and the Ve'ahavta, which will be led by Nikki Camaradingo.
Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavecha, v'chol nefshecha, v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu Havarim ha'ela asher anohi mitzavha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiteha v'vateha v'vlochteha v'derech v'shachveha u'komeha v'kshartam le'ot Aldeha, Behayu Letotofot Ben Eneha, Uktavtam, Al Mezuzot Beteha, Uvishareha.
Jenny Nagan will be leading us in the Micha Mocha on page 44.
Join in. Let me find the tune. I can't find the tune. Mi chamocha bo'elim Adonai, mi chamocha negar b'kodesh, nora tehila, osei selech, malchutara u'vonecha, Okech yom lifnei Moshe, ze'elianu v'yamru, Adonai yimlo le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar kifado Adonai el Yaakov, v'lo miyad hazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai go'al Yisrael.
And please join Holy Peters for the Hashkivenu on page 45.
Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hainu malkeinu l'chayim. Ashkibenu Adonai, v'hainu malkeinu l'chayim. I'm going to read on page 45 in the left margin here. Shelter me in a leaf. Shelter me in a leaf, shelter me in a stone. I envy them their sure peace. Shelter me, God, protect and conceal me. Enclose me in your fences. Pick me up from the dust that turns me gray. Embrace me with your eternity, like a leaf and a stone nourished with dew. Make me a path of permanence, my heart is shadowed. Anoint me with your dazzle, which I feel in my breath. Wash away my trembling, wash away doubt. The nights are ephemeral, the days filled with pain. Send your help, God.
Thank you, Willie. That was beautiful. Judy Pitakowski will be leading us in the Vishamru on page 46.
Vishamru Bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Ladoratam Barit Olam Ubnei Bnei Yisrael Oti Leolam Bnei Bnei Yisrael Oti Leolam Ki Sheshet Yamim Asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash.
Thank you, Judy, and please welcome Ellen Prinstein to help us in some of the concluding prayers of this service.
We're going to be reciting the Chatzi Kaddish on page 46. If it's your minhag to rise, please continue to do so. If not, you may be seated at this time. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach yirtei v'yamlit malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon, u'chayei decho beit Yisrael, ba'gala, ba'gala, u'bizman karib, v'yimeru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach, me'olam oro me'amaya, yiparach, yiparach v'yishtabach, yipa'av yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'richut, li'elam mikol bechata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram b'yoma v'yimeru amen. We're going to begin the Amidah. It begins on page 47 and continues through page 53. Please use this opportunity to either recite the prayers in our Siddur or to recite the prayers that are deep in your heart at this time. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha Adonai, Sefatai Tiftachu Fi Yagi Tehilatecha. If you're still davening, please continue to do so. Otherwise, please join me in the middle of page 52. Oseh shalom b'mromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. We're going to continue in the middle of page 53 with the Magen Avot. Magen Avot Yikaro Nechaye Meitim B'mamaro Ha'el HaKadosh She'en Kamohu Hameniach Li'amo B'yom Shabbat Kodsho Kivam Ratzah Lehaniach Lahem, Kivam Ratzah Lehaniach Lahem, Lefanav Navot V'yirav V'achad, V'nodeh Lishmo B'chol Yom Tamid, Me'on habrachot el haodaot Adon hashalom mekadesh hashabbat u'marech shvi ומניח בקדושה, ויעמידו שני עונג, זכר למעשה בראשית. We'll continue with the Kaddish Shalem, page 54. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach yutei v'yamlik malchutei, v'chayechon u'yomechon u'chayedecho be'Yisrael. Bagala ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עמיה יתברך. And now we'll turn to the right melody. Let's see, here we go. Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ah v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha v'rehu v'elah mikol berchata v'shirata tusbechata v'nechemata da'miran v'yoma v'yimeru tikabal tzaloton v'ubal tahon v'chol Yisrael kadam avuhon v'yishmaya v'yimeru yehi shlam araba mishamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru Oseh shalom b'mromav, u'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That was beautiful. And please join Lisa Lasseter now for the Aleinu on page 56 and 57.
And grace. And grace. I'm sorry, and grace.
Aleinu l'shabea l'adon hakol, latet kedula liotzer b'shit, shelo asanu goyei habato, velo samanu mishmehot ha'adama, shehosam pelvinu hahem, velo aleinu v'chol amonam. Vanachnu kolim u'mishtacharim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamalchim hakadosh baruch hu shechunotei shamayim v'yosei haaretz u'Moshe yirkabu b'shamayim ima'av Ushkinatu zo, Megave meromim, Hu Eloheinu eno, Emet malkeinu efesulato, Kakatu betorato, Ve'adatayom behoshevota, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim, Bashamayim ima'am, Ve'al ha'aretz, Mitachat enon. Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai imov le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai, l'nelecha kol ha'aretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, Ushama, 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 Thank you, Grace and Lisa. Thank you. Ellen Satz will be leading us in the Mourner's Cottage.
Hi, everyone. Tonight, celebrating, observing their Yortzeit is Grace Shimano, the mother-in-law of Molly Shimano, Myra Gasser, cousin of Betsy Stein, Jeanette Kettleman, aunt of Nancy Levick, Janet Kahn, wife of Charles Kahn, Beatrice Avner, mother-in-law of Belina Avner, Irving Shimano, husband of Molly Shimano, Joseph Slapper, father of Rosalind Gullery, and Adele Habibi, grandmother of Erin Tarika. So please join me. Help me out. Yeskidal v'yeskadash me'rava v'alma diva v'pihim v'mal v'chayim v'chay hom v'chan me'chan v'chayei Yisrael v'adalav v'zman kariv yimru amen Yehei shma v'ala me'olam v'maya Yiskarah, 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 Yisamam, Yisnasei, Yisadar, Yisalev, Yisalal, Shveda Kudusha, Brihu, Lewa, Minko, Birakav, Viristaba, Vitushpahar, Vinachamata, Damin, Biom, Biomah, Amen. Yehei Shama, Rabba, Min, Shemayim, Vahim, Aleinu, Bialko, Yisrael, Vimu, Amen. Osei Shalom Yoma, Hu Yasei Shalom, Aleinu v'Alko Yisrael, V'nu, Amen. Yes. So, I'm going to, let me get my shofar here. As you can tell by this evening, we are hoping that next weekend we have our Shabbaton. We will probably have it one way or another. We're hoping that Michael Seidel will be here in person and that we can do all of the things that we hope to do. On the 11th, Tuesday 11th, we have cooking Mexican kosher with Erin Garcia. Hopefully Erin is well now, and hopefully we can do that. On the 13th, making challah with Lisa and Grace. I assume that's on. And on the 14th, and I was asked if the service is at 6 or 6:30. I did not hear back from Misha. She is not well, but I think it is at 6:30. Because hopefully there will be some sort of a dinner before that. Excuse me? Oh, is the dinner after? The service, oh, okay, dinner is after. Oh, that's right, dinner at 7:30.
So Ellen, I am online. This is Misha.
Oh, hi, Misha. So is the service at 6:30?
Michael was the one that designated that. So what does your shofar say?
6:30, but the e-blast said 6 o'clock.
Okay, so it's at 6:30. That's what Michael said.
Okay, thank you. So 6:30
and after the service is a family-friendly meal. that everyone's invited to. There is no charge. We would love to see you there so that you can visit with Michael. So that's what's going on next Friday. Go ahead.
Good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, yes.
Yeah.
Harry? Do we need reservations for that, or can they show up?
Yes, you need reservations. They are on the e-blast.
Okay, please make a reservation.
Just so we know how much food to make.
Yeah, just call so they can know how much food to make. Perfect, yeah. All right. So I think that's as much as I'll try to get through. You know, everything, as we know tonight, everything can just change. I did have Anna go out and purchase KN95 masks. They will be available next week for everybody, including the children, for their size, just so we can be more careful. I don't know how we can be more careful. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Ellen, can I pop in for another moment?
Yes, go ahead.
So for next week, sorry, this is so disjointed. For next week on Sunday, we have a Shabbat candle making day. So if you come in at 12:30, you can make little Shabbat candles that we will light on Friday night with Michael. If you stay till 2 o'clock, that's this Sunday. If you stay till 2 o'clock, we will be making Havdalah candles, and we will actually be dipping them and then braiding them afterwards. So if you're going to stay for that, and you must have an adult if you're a smaller child, because we will be working with hot wax. We will not be having Erin. There are too many problems with her being sick. With Tanya was going to be our very special translator. She's uncomfortable if things are not masked. So we just decided that that would not happen. Lisa and Grace will be online, and the ingredients for their challah is in the shofar. I have done this making with Lisa, and it's one of the fastest and best recipes. So I strongly encourage you to join us for that. Finally, you have Friday, which we will have the service with Mike. The young people will be lighting their Shabbat candles. And there's dinner afterwards. On Havdalah on Saturday, those people that made Havdalah candles will be lighting them during Michael's ending service. Okay, that's everything.
Thank you, Misha. And everyone, please turn to page 77 to join Betsy Stein in the Adorable. Well, just a minute, we need to find the page.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Although most of us know it by heart, probably.
Yes.
But it's always good to have a page.
And it's always good to have someone with a beautiful voice.
Okay, here we go. Please join me. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kal Yetzir Nivra Le'ed Nasa V'chefsa Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol Leva'ado Yimloch Nora V'hu haya, v'hu hoveh, v'hu yiyeh b'tifara, v'hu yiyeh b'tifara, v'hu echad v'yein sheni, leham shilo lehachbira, Beli reshit, beli tachlit, below ha'oz v'ha'misra, below ha'oz v'ha'misra, v'hu eli v'chai goali, v'tzur chevli be'etzara, v'hu nisi umanosli, Menat kosi beyom ekra, menat kosi beyom ekra, beyado aki druchi, ve'eti shan ve'aira, ve'imruchi geviati, Adonai li velo ira, Adonai li velo ira.
Thank you, beautiful. And Judy Sherman will be leading us in the Kiddush over the wine on page 76.
Want everyone to join us for this? Come down and get some more?
Sure.
At least.
Why don't you come down and get some more and join us?
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'vatzavanu, v'shabbat kadsho b'yohava u'ratzon, himhilanu, zikaron l'ma'aseh v'reishim. Ki hu yom tehila limakre kodesh, zeker letziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'ota, v'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, V'yahava u'ratzon, hinkaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-shabbat. Amen.
Shalom. Thank you, Judy. So much. Thank you all for attending. Or you want to do the That's okay. Okay, we're going to do the blessings over the challah.
That's much shorter.
Much shorter. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lachem min haaretz.
Shabbat
Amen.
Well, we have a color here. Those of you who are brave enough to take it.
We were going to do challah at the dinner prior to the service, and hopefully next year we'll be able to gather at dinner.
Does somebody ask me to come up with the speaker too? No, we didn't. I'm going to do the speaker right now. Oh, okay. Okay, everyone, we have a wonderful guest speaker this evening. So when we're finished with our challah, I will introduce her. I can't tell you all how happy I am to have our guest speaker this evening, especially during these times of environmental concerns, environmental degradation. We have a voice here in New Mexico, very strong, an activist, Camilla Feibelbaum, who is the director of the New Mexico chapter of the Sierra Club. She is a native of New Mexico, and she received her BA in environmental biology from Columbia University, her MA from Puerto Rico University, and there she worked for 10 years protecting the leatherback turtles and their nesting habitats. She's been active in the Sierra Club since she was a student, and she was appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the Senate as a trustee on the Morrison Stewart Udall Foundation. Husband Xavier and children Anahi and Raphael are here with her. So welcome, welcome to you, Camilla, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much. I think first I'll ask if everyone can hear me okay. Great. And in the sanctuary as well, you can wave. Great. Okay. Wonderful. Well, first, let me just say thank you so much to Susan Citron for inviting me to speak tonight. It's really neat to be in this Sisterhood Shabbat, especially knowing how many young people and how many young women around the globe are taking action today on the critical need around global climate change. So I'm just really grateful to be here with you tonight. Also want to say hi to Paul, and I don't know if the Buckhalters are out there somewhere, and then to my parents who've joined tonight on Zoom. So I'll back up a little. I'm Camilla Feibelman. As Susan, I think that was Susan at the podium, said, I'm the director of the Rio Grande chapter of the Sierra Club, and that is home to 35,000 members and supporters all around the state of New Mexico and West Texas. And I moved back to New Mexico in 2013 to take on that role after having gotten to be out in the world and really understand the urgency of protecting our planet for future generations. And for all the kids and young people who sang and spoke tonight, you know, you're part of that, a part of that cause of environmental protection. In fact, my parents really helped ground me in those values. My mom sent me off to the Girl Scout camp up in Jemez every summer, where I really started to see the human impact on the environment from suppressed forest fires and overdevelopment. And my dad, whose mom took us berry picking and picking leaves and always getting out into nature as a way of resting and getting grounded and centered. I had hoped to be there with you for this Shabbat meal and introduce you to Javi and Anai and Raphael and get to commune a little bit, but you know, these virtual times, you know, make for creative solutions. And in thinking about the pandemic, you know, it's, you go out, you see everybody's in a mask. There's not a single human on the planet that doesn't know that there's a problem, and whether they're willing to take the steps towards the solution, know what the solutions are. We need to stay distanced. We need to wear masks. We need to get vaccinated. And even with a problem so ubiquitous, with solutions that are so accessible, we find so many of our friends and neighbors really being given inaccurate information and not being able to take action to protect themselves. And so then you take something like climate change that's equally global in scale, and it's happening now, and we know that there are solutions, but the evidence of the problem is maybe a little more diffuse, not quite as obvious as every human in a mask. And the solutions are a little bit harder. It's not 3 simple steps. It's a lot of steps to a lot of different problems. And yet, just a week ago, we see 1,000 of our friends and neighbors in Boulder lose their homes in the flash of a forest fire in the wrong season, only to be followed by a ton of snow in the next breath. And in the West, unseasonable heat that was in the Midwest, I should say, unseasonable heat driving ferocious tornadoes and causing a huge loss of life and property. And here in New Mexico, things for us on climate change are under a real magnifying glass. In the Southwest, we will feel and are feeling the impacts of global climate change at a much greater rate and level than other places. Our temperatures are rising faster than in other places. Our droughts are more intractable and lasting longer. Our fire seasons are more devastating. And even our snowpack is evaporating so much earlier and so much faster that it doesn't become that sacred and needed water in our spring season. So I hate to come to you on a Friday of rest and renewal with bad news. And so as I was thinking about what to say, I thought, maybe I should understand a little bit more about what is Shabbat and what does it mean and what should we be thinking about on our weekly day of rest. And so I did some reading and listening, and one rabbi and what he had to say really struck me. He said, Shabbat is about releasing our dominance over nature. That's why we stop working in the ways we work. We put down the plow, we put down the cell phone, and we release our dominance over nature. But we also come back into balance with our neighbors and back into balance with ourselves. And so I thought I would take each one of those themes, coming back into balance with ourselves, with our neighbors, and with nature. Now, I don't know how many of you watched Don't Look Up. And if you're like me, it's one of these movies where you sort of see yourself and maybe not in a good way. If you haven't seen the movie, it's worth a watch. People reacting out of real fear in a moment of global crisis, and really finding the only way to get through is shouting, and yet even that doesn't really work. And we might not be distracted when it comes to global climate change from celebrity divorces, as the case of the movie, but in a state like New Mexico, we're facing so many issues, whether it's poverty or our ailing education system or the needs of immigrant brothers and sisters. And so if we only shout, if that is the way that we bring this message to people within ourselves, I think we lose people, and you can feel overwhelmed and maybe like the problem is just too big and you're not even clear what action to take. So in coming back to balance with myself, I think first about calming down, connecting with nature, being inspired by nature as an individual, understanding what the small steps that I can take to win real victories for the climate, and doing that in compassion, right? Because when you hear the misinformation or the lack of action, what can first come is anger. But we have to start where people are. And we're going to be better able to do that by starting with ourselves. When it comes to coming back into connection with our neighbors, I think especially in light of something like climate change or even the COVID crisis, we have to really understand where others are coming from. I think every single one of us in New Mexico has benefited from the work and the extractive industries that have been benefiting our electric life here in the state for my whole life. The San Juan Four Corners area has powered my day-to-day life since I was born, and now the Permian Basin driving a big oil boom. And so what happens to folks as we transition into a new renewable future? What are people's jobs? How do they develop their livelihoods? What do their kids do? Do they stay in those same regions? So by joining with our neighbors, even if they see things differently, we can identify solutions that work for everyone. And as we try to come back into balance with nature every Friday or in our rest times during the holidays, we have to consider how does our lifestyle impact the globe, not just in the future, but right now for our kids who are exposed to pollution levels that cause outsized asthma rates and more. So we have to look for those technologies and those solutions and be at the forefront, but we also have to make sure that we're grounded in science, that the solutions that are being proposed to us are really evidenced by good thought and good science. And behind the development of markets, we need good laws. We need our governments to step in and protect us and make sure that our air, that our water, and our communities are clean and safe for us. So I hope that in grounding ourselves in those three things, a self-commitment to action and compassion, a consideration of our neighbors, and a centering of nature in how we move forward, can help frame maybe the more mundane things that I'll now share with you about how things are going in New Mexico and what we're working on in terms of solutions for curbing global climate change. Although I will say that some of our main natural resources to be impacted by our changing climate are our air and our water. So those things are all inextricable. So you'll know that climate change is driven by the emission of greenhouse gases. That can be CO2, that can be methane, lots of invisible things in the air keeping the heat in. And so the problem with global climate change is that there are so many sectors that we need to attend. First, how do we keep the lights on? The second is, what are we extracting from our lands and what does that result in the atmosphere? How about our transportation? How about our buildings? How about manufacturing? Each one of these sectors has an impact on the climate. So here in New Mexico, we've made some really good progress on reducing greenhouse gases in our electric sector. You may have heard of the Energy Transition Act, which requires the 3 regulated utilities in New Mexico, including PNM, to have 0 carbon emissions in their electric generation by 2040. And PNM, sorry, I should say 2045, and PNM has committed to going there earlier in 2040. Now, this is big news because in places like the San Juan Generating Station, which is a coal-fired power plant that for environmental and economic reasons will shut down this summer, all of the energy there, coal-fired, will be replaced by renewable energy and battery storage. The plant will be closing earlier than it was slated to, and so the Energy Transition Act creates basically a low interest rate bond that helps the utility shut down the plant earlier and helps customers save money while doing that, and still generates transition funding for communities and workers. But the electric sector is just one aspect of how we generate greenhouse gases. The oil and gas extractive industries most of that oil and gas is exported out of the state and isn't even tabulated in our greenhouse gas accounting. And yet still, the oil and gas extractive industry accounts for about 53% of the greenhouse gases that are being emitted in New Mexico. And so the problem that we have there is, and yes, some of it is used locally through home heating or even some of the gas-fired power plants, but a big source of the pollution is because the oil and gas industry is leaking, venting, and flaring gas throughout its extractive process. And you might have heard about methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas that's 86 times more potent than CO2 over a 20-year period. But because it's invisible and odorless, it's hard to detect. And so that means it can be leaking or being purposely vented or purposely flared throughout the extractive process from extraction to use. So there are strong rules in the pike, both federally and at the state level, but we're not talking about getting anywhere near to zero emissions. So these rules are very important, but they are stopgaps. And they're especially important for communities on the ground because along with the methane that pollutes out, you've got other pollutants like ozone precursors, volatile organic compounds that lead to air pollution on the ground that can be very dangerous for communities and especially for kids and elder people. The other thing that's difficult about the oil and gas industry and the pollution impacts on communities is that this is actually a public good being extracted off public lands. And our leasing rates, our bonding rates, our royalty rates haven't been increased in decades. So that means that both the federal and state government aren't getting nearly the income that might be due to them if these rates were fair. I think we're all well aware that the oil and gas industry is a key contributor to the state's budget. However, that hasn't always been as heavily true. Changes to the tax code over the years, especially in 2003 and 2013, made us much more dependent on oil and gas for our state revenue. There are initiatives federally to look at ways for states to transition away from dependence on fossil fuel extraction by creating a flat income rate for states like ours or Wyoming to help states recover as they transition away from fossil fuels. Now, you may have heard in the news, and I know I'm talking a lot of chemistry, methane, and now I'll talk hydrogen. There's an idea that you could take methane or natural gas and turn it into hydrogen, and that this might be some climate solution. However, to get that hydrogen, in most cases, you need natural gas. You got to get the H off the molecule, and then you use more natural gas to power getting that H off. Once you have the H, then in many cases, you burn that hydrogen and you've got on the ground pollution. So we have to be really careful with some of these apparent climate solutions. Sometimes, like clean coal, it's not as good as it sounds. And so we want to take a certain amount of care there. And that's going to be really important as we enter into the coming 30-day legislative session. You may know we are the only state with an all-volunteer legislature. This year is just a 30-day budget session, so anything else that takes place has to be on the governor's call. And there's a lot to do in a budget session, especially one like this where the state is flooded with income from oil and gas, but also from some tax restructuring last year and from federal funds. But there's going to be a few opportunities to make a good difference for the climate. But I'll say first that we heard an announcement today that there would be a big drive to pass a Voting Rights Act in New Mexico. So although that's not specifically environmental, our ability to participate and vote and really advocate for the things we care about is very important. So we will prioritize the Voting Rights Act as well. The governor has said that she will also prioritize some sort of climate bill. We don't know exactly what it will be, but it will be key to have short-term carbon reductions that we can see having an impact on New Mexico now or in the near future. And that might impact things like how available are electric vehicles to the average buyer through clean cars rules. It might have to do with what our green building codes look like. My husband, Javier, is an architect and focuses on green buildings and how we can make our buildings not just efficient from an energy standpoint, but also from the pocketbook standpoint. So we'll be watching closely to understand what this climate bill might do. One of the key things we'll be looking out for is how it addresses and supports overburdened or impacted communities that live alongside polluting facilities. And the last thing to really look for in the legislative session is the budget itself. Budgets are policy. Yesterday, the governor's budget came out and the legislature's budget come out, and they spend a lot of the session going back and forth seeking some sort of agreement. We were pretty disappointed to see a legislative budget that didn't significantly prioritize the climate. We have environmental agencies that are deeply underfunded and that don't actually have the inspectors that can go out and visit polluting facilities and then enforce in the cases where there are violations, much less be developing the new rules that protect our air and our water. So I know that that is a lot to take in, but I think the underlying message for people who are seeing climate change as this issue that I think Naomi Klein said causes her to find herself to be almost a climate denier. It's not that she denies the existence of climate change, but she finds it so scary and overwhelming that she sort of closes the book and sets it aside. So I view our climate as an apple. I'm not going to be able to eat that whole apple at once, as hard as I try, but we take one bite at a time. And we remember that this is good for ourselves because it grounds us in our own moral and ethical need to take action for our friends and neighbors. It helps us protect our friends and our neighbors, helps engage people who view things differently than we do in solutions and innovations that can raise all of our boats, I guess you could say, in New Mexico, all of our lowriders. I don't know, something different than that. And that we are grounded in the nature that sustains us, our common home that we will leave to our children. And I see my little stepdaughter there on the screen with my parents. And so she's part of that next generation, always keeping me inspired to keep working to make sure that we have done our part to leave our kids the planet that they deserve. So that's all I've got for you tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we New Mexicans are especially lucky to have your voice and your passion for the stewardship and the care of our environment. Sisterhood wants to make a contribution to our local chapter of the Sierra Club in your honor. And I would encourage all of us to join the Sierra Club. It's a great club. Paul and I have belonged to it for many, many years, and it's just a wonderful organization. So I want to thank you all for attending this Sisterhood Shabbat. Again, I'm sorry we couldn't have dinner together, but it was wonderful at least to be together remotely, and some of us here in the sanctuary. Shabbat Shalom, and be safe and healthy.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Boy, this was tough. I'm on. Yeah, I'm on. My book. Yeah, but